Welcome to the Blackwater Podcast. Today your hosts, Sage and Julius, talk to Raela Marie Villanueva. Raela is a holistic wellness guide and chief Pixie Priestess of Emerald Coast Pixies. She shares her story of surviving grief and the loss of a loved one to suicide, becoming a caregiver, and healing through topical steroid withdrawal through her holistic wellness journey. We hope you enjoy the show, and if you don't, we'd love to hear about it. We are here today with Raela, and we have Sage on the phone, and this is me, Julius. It's an honor to have Raela here with us today. I've known Raela, I don't even know if you remember the first time we met. It was with Emily Sutton
at
Paradise.
That's what you said, yeah. So it's been a few years.
Yep.
And then it's like we reconnected.
We did.
In the last couple of years from the community that we are in.
Yeah, we kind of both mutually kind of came to the same place a little bit.
Yeah.
But I always remember you as kind of someone who's like fun and whimsical, but also someone who you've experienced traumas that you're fairly open about. Mm-hmm. And so I guess an intimacy and vulnerability about you two that I've always loved.
Yeah, I kind of think of Chiron, the wounded healer. It's kind of who I resonate with.
I like that. Caleb actually, he I think views himself as through that archetype too.
Yeah.
I think we could start with maybe a little bit about your life story.
Okay.
However you want to start that. And it doesn't have to be linear. You can bounce around.
Well, I was telling you earlier, I've gotten to a point where I feel like I've been on a holistic journey, that I decided I'm going on this holistic journey in 2006. And after surviving the loss of my brother to suicide in 97, I was like, I'm taking myself off medications. I'm quitting my full-time job with the Ice Pilots. I'm going to sell Juice Plus in a capsule, and I'm going to, just do my own thing, and I'm going to eat healthy and do all these things. And I had no clue what I was doing. And I actually, the next year had, it was like the perfect storm. My brother's 10-year anniversary was coming up, and a group of us were at a wedding weekend in New Orleans, and it was Easter weekend, which was when he passed. And I was like, I'm just going to escape the pain, and I'm going to take a hit of ecstasy, which I had done a million times during my grief journey in my 20s, just escaping with the pain, and was not in my body, I don't feel like. And I, nobody really wanted to take the time to like try and help me, because it was taking away from the wedding. It was all these things. And it was like, I felt like people were pointing the finger at me, like, you're not being responsible with your mental health, which is partly true. But, when you see somebody that's, hopefully this is what they have all learned, the ones that I've reconnected with, because they all deserted me after that. And, the point of it is, if you see somebody who's not in a good space, don't just sit there and watch. It could have been 10 times worse, is what I am so grateful for. But it was pretty traumatic what happened.
So you had kind of a breakdown?
Yeah, it was a full breakdown. And, I feel like I was with my roommate and best friend at the time. We were back at the hotel room, and I had been up for a couple of days, apparently, and nobody did anything about it. I was roaming around New Orleans by myself. It was very scary that I lived through that. And the girl came back to the room that morning. It was Easter, and I was just not in the right space. And we were talking about how we didn't like each other in high school. And the next thing, I woke up in a cold shower and have been told, just she and I in the room, that I physically tried to like make out with her, which freaked her out. She's very straight-laced. And then I physically tried to strangle her with my bare hands. Now, I don't even weigh 100 pounds.
Yeah.
She's a little bit bigger than me. And when everyone, was like, wow, you attacked her while you're on ecstasy? That doesn't make sense. I'm like, I don't know. Her word against mine. And she would never, she's the type of personality that like, I just got cut off from that point on. Like we were living together, and she was like, wouldn't be in this house with me, and took all my friends, which I'm glad, because I was becoming this other type of person that very shallow. I'm glad that that got diverted. But at the time, you don't see that,
Yeah, that was your community.
Yeah, it was the wrong community, but it was community. And it was, I had friends I did drugs with and whatnot, it was like we partied and she wasn't like that. But I introduced her to all of them and I brought her into my world being me. She had moved back from Orlando and had moved away when we were in high school or whatever. And so her brother was like, oh, can you take her in? She doesn't know anyone. And I introduced her to everyone. And then, I don't know, it just, just in an instant. And I wasn't even I don't feel like I was there. So I don't know what happened. I'm still coming to, as many years as I've come to peace with it. And I saw her last year for the first time in a decade. I tried to make my peace with her and she just wouldn't have it. And so I just made my own peace with her by handing her a Dream Project CD, my passion project. And she moved away. And then out of nowhere, saw her last year. And it was the 15-year anniversary since that had happened between us. And I was like, getting ready to move to New Orleans. And I'm like, I guess I'm supposed to make peace with this on my own. Yeah. And I did. I saw her. She scowled at me. And I'm like, she really basically bullied me when I was going through all that. And people didn't see it. And now I realize, like letting go of all those friends that made room for the community that's in my life now. And the real, like now I know what it means to be holistic and how to take responsibility for your mental health. And doing, like I have my own daily checklist and whatnot. But it's like I had to go through that and survive that and come out okay, but go through a really dark space. Lots of walking that hero's journey by myself. And that's when I got into music and going to open mic nights and met a musician who turned my poem into a song. And that's where the Dream Project came about, And it was like, I had to go through that and go walk through that loneliness and just be out of my comfort zone to end up where I'm at today. And so, it took a lot of still letting go. I mean, I was still doing some other street drugs and I was in very toxic relationships for all the wrong reasons and would just stay. And finally, it's been 10 years. This year, I can say I haven't touched any street drugs. I just fully plant-based medicine. I don't even drink alcohol anymore. So, but again, it was, going through that loss and being abandoned, like completely abandoned and by people who were like, love you like a sister, been friends forever. And then they take her side and I'm just left to...
There was no conflict resolution afterwards.
No.
It was just like, we can't communicate about this.
I tried, but, and I never felt, it was like when you face a bully, and I was in my 30s. Who the hell bullies at 30? So I was like, kind of just, I would cower and I never fully was like, oh, I'm sorry for what happened or anything. She just didn't want to talk about it. Yeah. So I just always just let it go.
I feel like sometimes that's so hard when someone else, like you're ready, you feel like you've changed, you're ready to come to peace with someone else and they're not interested in that process. And then you have to do it on your own side. And I love that you said that.
And you do it in whatever, you don't have to physically say anything. You don't have to write, or maybe you can write it out and never send it, but you do it in your own way that feels good to you and you let it go. And that's all you have to do, really. And I've done it a couple of times. Like when I went to the Philippines, I was on the other side of the world and I was like, man, at that time I was like, I don't even know if I want to go back to the States. I just want to stay here. And I made peace on the roof in Manila and invited the people up there who I felt I needed to forgive and to forgive me. I invited them up there and it was like, I don't know, this just weight being lifted. I had just read Eat, Pray, Love and I was like, kind of like, well, I can do that too. I'll just invite them up here. I'm on the other side of the world. I want to leave it all here, and whatever happens from here, then that's it. And so that was my way of really letting go. And then running into her last year, I was like, okay, that's not where I'm at anymore. I don't have to engage. So, but going through that, was obviously like, nope, you're going to have to stay on medication. And I was put on medication after my brother took his life. I was just like, I need help. Like I can't talk to anyone in my family, my friends. I feel like I'm being a burden to them and I don't know what to do with these feelings. And so I was like, I need to go get help. And probably the first mistake was going to family friend psychiatrist, and you know, because whatever, didn't cost anything. They're going to give you free meds, all the things, you know. And I'm like, but I need help. And right away, they put me on Prozac. And it was like, all right, you know, and all it did was mask all of my emotions. I was happy all the time. I continued to party and do my thing, escape the pain. And all it did was like suppress all my emotions. I wasn't grieving. And by the end of that year, I had a almost hospitalization downward spiral. And then what did they do? They put me on another med. And then this one made me gain weight and made me isolated and all the things. So it was like from 97, the year he died, they put me on my first medication, all the way through taking myself off of it for the last time in 2020. When I decided I wanted to drink cacao instead of coffee every day, and I was told, you know, got to be careful if you're on antidepressants, SSRIs, it can increase the serotonin level. So I was like, well, maybe this is a good time to try getting off of it. And I've been off since and been introduced to other forms of medicine, like the Wim Hof method, which was something we're going to talk about. And so that many years of on and off trying to get, I mean, there were some medications I could not physically get off of. I couldn't drive. So I was like, no. And the only way I got off of that medication, was when I had my first mental like breakdown. But I really feel like being on all these meds and having to go through the ups and downs of each one and the cycles and whatnot and the side effects is what led to that, along with other things that were going on in my life and not taking full responsibility or knowing how to. My own mental health, you know, having a checklist and routines and all the things. And so it's been a whole learning process. One of the things for me was, you know, just this battle of being on the meds and trying to stay off of them and trying to, you know, maintain, but always being told I have a diagnosis, which my mother has. She's bipolar 1. My brother was diagnosed with that. They try to tell me that after putting me on medications and watching me fall, then they're going to label me. I don't like to accept that, but it's on record and I just, you know, but you can change your ancestral history and you can change a diagnosis. I feel like, you know, I just feel like that's just on paper. You know, I've lived through and I have proven with the ice and cold water and breath work that I can pull myself out of a downward spiral by sitting in ice every day. I did that 2 years ago and I did it last year too. So it's just crazy. Like a lot of it is what I've learned is mind over matter. You really can control the mind. And, you know, a lot of it is just commitment and discipline and really just setting like, I'm going to get out of this. And I did it. So I just, you know, as far as the medications, antidepressants is one thing. And then I dealt with being exposed to topical steroid creams for my eczema, which led to a whole nother like illness within me that brought up stuff through my skin. And that's where I really got turned on to cold water therapy, breath work 4 years ago. So, you know, and that has become a form of medicine for me. Like I just did a cold dip in my mom's pool before I came here. I was like, wait, I haven't done my cold water yet today. I was like, it's almost like you want to do it, but you don't want, I know you know. But I'm like, I know if I don't do it, it's like I didn't take my medicine today. And so I got out there and the sun is shining, you know, and I'm like, oh, and I put on Bryn's song and I play it because it's exactly 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So I give myself a countdown and I'm like, 3 minutes, I can do this. And it felt great because I was like, oh, I know I'm going to go talk to Julius and share how this has helped me on my journey, how it's helped my skin. I showed you a picture of what my skin looked like in 2019. And I was like, this is not eczema. And that was a culmination of being given a topical over-the-counter hydrocortisone. It's safe. It's over-the-counter. Bullshit. It's got steroids in it. And people don't realize what it will do to your body when you use it continually, and you're told that it's safe to put it on your neck and your face, which is like your thinnest skin, the most delicate, which is where my eczema had kind of got really inflamed, was on my neck. When my dad passed away 6 years ago, unexpectedly, I noticed that it was getting worse. I became a caregiver to my mom. And that was another story that I share is, you know, the suicide, dealing with the loss of surviving a suicide, becoming a caregiver, and then this topical steroid withdrawal. It was like these three communities I would have never known existed had it not happened to me. And these are the three that I share, like, what's helped me get through this. Having support is so important. So yeah, so when I went through that with the topical steroid, I was like, what is happening with my skin? This is not normal, you know, and out of vanity, I kept using the prescribed creams, but all I was doing was, again, suppressing the immune system, and then your skin will look better, and then all of a sudden you'll get another inflammation, and then you got to use the cream again. So it's a vicious cycle, and you have to completely withdraw from using it cold turkey, which I tried a couple times, and it just was so hard because it was just so much easier. Just lather that on there. It feels good. It's like taking a painkiller, I guess, you know. At the same time, I was in these support groups, and they're telling me, it sounds like you have topical steroid withdrawal. I'm like, no, I don't. I don't even know what that is. I was in denial, but I started looking into it because I was like, okay, something's not right. And I found a documentary that a girl named Brianna Banos just put out, like, at the same time. It was like divine timing. So I watch it, and it's called Preventable Protecting Our Largest Organ, which is our skin. And her use was way worse than mine, like years of using it and very intense, you know, prescriptions. And so she's still going, and this 4 years later, she's doing another documentary because it's still preventable. And just like suicide, you know, it was like, whoa. So I watched her documentary, and I was like, oh, I have to put this shit down. So that's what made me, July 8th of 2019, I stopped. And then the hell really broke loose after that. It was like the skin just getting worse. I got hives, which I don't know if you've ever dealt with hives, like camping and shit. Like endless, just all you want to do is scratch your skin off, like till it's bleeding. And I would wake up in the middle of the night, I would wake up just scratching myself. Then the depression got bad, just sleeping. It's like I couldn't control what I was going through. And it's crazy because I was taking care of my mom at the time. She was in a more independent state at the time, so that was good. But I had to deal with this. I would wake up and this is where cold water came in. I couldn't take hot showers or warm even. It hurt. It irritated the skin. So I would fill the bath with cold water and oatmeal and rub that on. And so I was already getting used to cold water. It was like I was kind of preparing myself and didn't even know it.
A prelude, yeah. A prelude.
Yeah. So, you know, it got to where, and I don't mean to be gross, but this is what it was like. You know, my skin would tear, would get red, inflame, my lymph nodes would blow up. There was liquid coming out of my skin called ooze, and it would smell. And then I would have flakes of dead skin. And I would see stories of people using brooms to sweep up their skin, like whole body. Mine went from my neck to my face, down my arms and my front and back, and I would lose pigmentation. And all I wanted to do was hide. Like, I didn't want to go outside. Everything would affect. Like, you couldn't go in the sun. I couldn't take hot showers. Any little stress or things I was wearing would affect a breakout. And then when I went to my naturopath May 1st, she was like, okay, you're going to have to use the steroid creams to get the inflammation down. And then after that, let's try something called Whole30. So I was introduced to this elimination program where you can kind of find out any triggers, things that you shouldn't eat that are going to cause inflammation. Also helps you improve your relationship with food. So I learned how to read labels. I learned that sugar is in everything. And so I've cut a lot of things out because of it. And so when she told me that, I worked on diet, and then I worked on using natural products, and then of course getting off of the steroid cream was the main thing. I even held on to them because, like,
just in case.
I don't know. I don't know why. I finally threw them. I took a picture and then I threw them away just so I can remember the names of them to share with other people. But and then I stuck with the thing that helped the most was having those support groups. And then that was 2019. And then that's when like New Year's Eve happened that year, and I went to an ecstatic dance, you know, kind of like sober and I don't know. I was like, what am I doing here? You know, and was totally meant to be there. That's where this whole holistic community came in as this huge support. And it was like, oh, I get it now. Why I had to let go of those people so long ago was to make room for this to come in and just to feel so like supported all the time. Like without a doubt, no matter what you do, I'm not going to let you fall. And it was just like, oh my God, this is worth the wait. So then, and then I was, before that New Year's, I was at Mahabhuta Festival, and our dear friend Rob Lenfesti of Mandala Springs in North Carolina near Asheville, he's an original Wim Hof instructor. Like he trained with Wim Hof, one of the first instructors. I start talking about my skin. He tells me, well, you know, I dealt with Raynaud's disease syndrome, and I turned to the Wim Hof method, and then I became an instructor. He was like, you have autoimmune disorder. This can help you with your inflammation. You know, come up to Asheville. We do retreats out in the mountains. And I'm like, cool. And he was like, it's in February. And I'm like, all right. And then in my head, I was like, nope.
Yeah.
I can do cold water, but not in February when it's snowing outside and you want me to jump in the stream. Yeah, no, I would do it now though, now that I know what it's like. But at the time I was like, nope, chickened out. February rolls around. Becca ended up going, and one of her friends told us all about it. And I was like, And then the pandemic hit and we were all on lockdown.
Yeah.
And I'm following Wim on Instagram. So I'm like, he issues this 40-day challenge. Get high on your own supply. Improve your, immune system and your autonomic nervous system. Be able to control it. All these things. And I was like, what the hell else are we doing? So I did for 40 days. I did his beginner breath work, which takes like 10 minutes. And then I was already doing cold water. Second part of the challenge was to add 30 seconds or more to the end of your shower. That was no problem. And then the third pillar is commitment. So you're committing to 40 full days. And I did it. And then at the end of it, I was just like, wow, I felt great. I was like, I have energy. I'm sleeping better. I'm able to hold my breath longer than I ever thought. I'm using my own breath to like make myself build my immunity during a pandemic, And then after 40 days, I was like, well, now what? Like, where's my ice bath? What am I supposed to do? And then Amy Jenks reached out. She had been doing ice baths since September the year before, and she saw me posting about it, and I was sharing because I was like, maybe somebody else is doing this. I don't know. And she reaches out and says, hey, do you want to go do an ice bath on the beach? And I'm like, what are you doing on the beach? Yeah. She's like, yeah, there's portable tubs. You just got to lug that out and coolers of ice. Because by this point, it was June 2nd. Summertime, ice melts quickly. And so we gathered a couple people and we went out there. And I was more than ready. And it was like 2 minutes for your first try, just to make sure you can get through it, that you're resting into it naturally and whatnot. Breathing on the beach, facing the mighty Gulf, which has been a sanctuary for me. And I was more than ready. And I slid right into the ice like it was nothing. I was smiling. And, Wim says, when you can smile in the discomfort, you've arrived. Because it's really uncomfortable. But I was ready, and just the sequence of how everything lined up, I was like, there's no doubt I'm supposed to be doing this. And so I got in, and for your first round, usually, they say 30 seconds is all you need to reap the benefits. But if you can stay in for like 3 to 5, then, there's other benefits like activating your brown fat so you can improve your metabolism. So that's a nice little added side effect. But, they say for your first one, try to just go to 2 minutes just to see that you're okay and you don't have any issues. And the only issue I had the first time was like my hands and feet would get really supercharged, tingly to where it was a little painful. So she was like, oh, it's okay. Just prayer position and take your hands out. Now I keep them in, but I would like take my feet and my hands out, kind of cheat a little bit. Your body's still in there. So I did 2 minutes facing the Gulf, smiling, and, cried when I got out. And we all did a round, and it's interesting because, you never know what's going to come up. Like Brynevere was howling. I mean, like a lot of anger, rage. And I have howled, cried, laughed, smiled, sang while in there. So it is like, you never know what could get triggered to come up, but it is stuff that you can just release. I think of it as a little Pixie portal, like a little cocoon, and you really go in and you can really come out like just feeling like totally different in a, shedding. And so that was the beginning. That was June 2nd, the first one. And then 4th of July, we did one at Samar Ponds. He was in town out at the condo, and we had a big group. We had all these people coming, on the beach, like, what are y'all doing? Watching. We had a girl who said she did it in high school, and we let her join us, She sat in there for at least a minute. We had people, just in awe, like, what are y'all doing? Filming us and all this, and we want them to know, so we would tell them. And then Samar Pond was kind of going back and forth from California at the time, so he had bought a 100-gallon tub and didn't want to leave it at the condo, and so they were like, can you take it to your mom's or you put it in the garage? And I'm like, okay. I get to my mom's, like, why am I going to put it in the garage when she's got a saltwater pool and a hot tub? We're going to put it right between. And that is something that saved us through the pandemic because, we'd leave my mom in the house. Nobody would go in there except me. But we could use the space outside, and we would gather in community once a week, twice a week. And I would start officiating. We called a holistic happy hour. None of us really drink. And we would have like cacao, bone broth, kombucha, healthy snacks. And, we'd compete with our snacks. It was like, this is fun. We'd have to have alcohol and plant medicine. So we would have cannabis. We would share any kind of plant medicine as well. But we coined it as a holistic happy hour with our Pixie polar plunge, which is I call it a more feminine, more inviting version of the Wim Hof method. Because it can be very masculine and kind of competitive with how long can you stand? And that's not what it's about.
I prefer your version of it.
Yeah, you do? Yeah. I mean, look at us. We wear crowns. We add rosemary for grounding, and fresh from the garden and flowers. And we sage the space and really set intention with the whole gathering instead of just jumping in the ice and whatever. And we really made it into ceremony to where even sometimes we would have Amy do a gong bath and we would be all blissed out on the grass afterwards. And, and the more we did it, I kind of was like, I don't know if I really want to get in the ice so much as I just prefer like facilitating. I like gathering people and like sharing and walking them through and setting our intentions together and sharing in a journal, like what words would come up for us afterwards. And we would all just always feel so good afterwards. And it was such a support thing. But then when I found out that year, being a survivor of suicide, it was September, which is Suicide Prevention Month. And Becca mentioned, that Wim's wife jumped from an 8-story building, leaving him with 4 kids, and they've all become a part of his business. And it strikes something deep down in you, whether you know the person or not, that becomes like a connection that nobody else is going to understand unless they've been there. Yeah. You're really not. And it's a community that it's like you don't choose to be there, but once you are, you're like, okay, I get it. And so it really was like, oh my God, like now I really want to meet him. I really feel this connection to him. And he wanted to show people and continues, his mission is to reach billions around the world, of taking someone who's where his wife was and in that space of just wanting to just go and pulling them into their body and into a safe space. And that is what sitting in cold water, sitting in ice will do. You never feel any more present. The only other time I can relate to is when I learned how to surf because I was dealing with depression. You would leave everything on shore and you have to focus on the now because you will get rolled by a wave or another surfer. You got to watch out for sharks if you're by the pier. I mean, all of it. Like that was like, okay, in the moment now, but you're really physically active in the moment. But sitting in ice, you're just like, I can't do anything but feel right here, right now. Like this is it. And so it kind of became a little bit of an addiction at that point. Not at that point, but moving on after that, I was like, okay, now I know I'm supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
And I know, and then I didn't even realize that was in 2020, that the following year was when I was going to have this own self-experiment of where I was in this downward spiral phase. And taking care of my mom, it got very stressful. I wasn't getting all the support that I needed. And
she had a downturn, and you had become her full-time care provider.
I was her full-time caregiver. And as the years progressed, this was the past 6 years, she became we kind of became codependent on each other, but we were doing a lot more for her than we should have been doing, but it was just the way it was. And so she, dealing with her mental health, she's been on and off meds. Doctors have been taking her on and off, and she ended up with 2 hospitalizations in 2017 and 18. And then at this point, she just wasn't sleeping well or something. And it just doesn't take much to, not be on your routine. And if you're up for one night, that spirals, and sleep is the most important thing that your body needs. And so she was just in this space, and then it put me in a space, and I was like, I can't get out of this fog I was in my head. And so in my head that I was like, fuck it. I'm going to bow down. I'm going to get back on the damn meds. If I have to, I know it's going to work within a week. So I called my doctor, and they were like, oh, it's going to be 2 weeks. And I was like, but I need it now. I was like, you know what? I'll keep that appointment, and I'm going to sit in ice once a day. Till then, I'm committed to, and then I also committed to riding my bike for 30 minutes a day, because I was like, I got to get out of this. And I did. And after the first couple days, it was like, I was like, okay, I'm okay. And I had people hold space for me to where I was like, if I need to howl, I'm going to howl. They're like, go for it. Or I would take my portable thing out to the beach, and I would just scream my head off, and nobody's there. It doesn't matter. And even if anybody was there, it's okay. Just let it out. And so after the first week, I was like seeing and feeling, and I was okay. I was like, I am in my body. I'm like, I am okay. I'm sleeping. It was like, I'm not on any meds. I've just been doing the breath work, doing the ice, and working out every day, or doing 30 minutes a day. I was like, that's not that much. And then I decided, I was like, you know what? Because it was also my birthday coming up, and I didn't want to acknowledge it. But after a week's worth of seeing me pull myself up out of this thing, I was like, what? I need to celebrate. Yeah. So I was like, I called the doctor back, and I said, look, can I push that appointment out another week? And I told her what I'd been doing. And I said, I'm okay right now. I said, but I'm still going to meet with you. We're still going to talk. And I said, I'm going to go to New Orleans and celebrate my birthday. And I took my portable tub with me, because I made a promise to myself I was going to get in ice every single day. All you had to do was go get ice. And I continued with it, and I was more than okay. I went to the doctors, and they were like, you're doing fine. If you want something that maybe can help take the edge off, we can do that. She gave me 1 or 2 prescriptions I've not even touched. I put them in it's like, okay, this will just be whatever, just in case. No, haven't even touched them. And I've still maintained being able to stay off the meds since then. And then, just know that when I get into that space, I know what to do, and it quickly, and I know to ask for help. And that's something that I, throughout my advocacy of being a mental health advocate, I would always preach, ask for help, here's the resources, but I wasn't always good at asking for myself or admitting that I needed it. So, but now, I know who to call on. I know any time of the day or night, but really being able to rely on yourself for that is a pretty powerful thing. And so then I started doing workshops. Well, last year, my mom ended up in a space again, and I knew that I was coming out of the role of caregiving by summer. I was like, I got to move. I got to move to New Orleans. At least I know people there. It's just far enough away, and try and get what's going on here over there. I work with a lot of musicians over there through the Dream Project. And so I knew I was going to be moving. And then my mom ended up in the hospital. It was April. And it was the weekend right before I had planned my first workshop to do an empathic Pixie polar plunge holistic happy hour. And I put it out, and within a week it sold out. And I was like, wow, these people really want to do this. And they all, and so then my mom ends up in where she's at. I'm like, she's in good hands. It freed me up, and it went off without a hitch. And it was the most beautiful experience. All these people, I felt like it was a support group, and everyone was there for some sort of a health reason. Like, I'm dealing with mental health stuff. I'm dealing with someone was getting over cancer and doing, done with her chemo radiation therapy and wanted another form of continuing healing. And everybody was, and one girl brought her husband along. He just wanted to check it out, and we all did it. And it was just so beautiful. And then I moved, and then it was like, everything just like stopped. I was going 100 miles an hour, and then everything stopped, and it was like, okay, now you have to feel. And for a couple months there, I withdrew while I was in New Orleans and just kind of like came into myself, and I realized looking back, because I didn't feel like myself by the time my 50th birthday rolled around, September, I wanted to have like a big party and do another Dream CD release, and all of that caved in an instant. And I was just like, nope, I'm not feeling myself. And I had some friends come in town. It made me feel better, but it was like, it's not where I want to be. And then a friend pointed out to me, and my mom wasn't doing good since, she's had more setbacks over here. And so it kept me from focusing on myself. And then what I realized, a friend told me, like around October, things started to turn back around. November, after Thanksgiving, and then leading into Christmas, I finally was starting to get into a groove, did another workshop over here, finding some people over there to do ice with. And when things started to turn around, a friend of mine pointed out, he was like, I said, yeah, I really wasn't feeling like myself. He was like, yeah, you were pretty quiet. And I was like, yeah, that's not like me. And he's like, you need to pat yourself on the back and realize what you just went through. And he's like, you're grieving what you left behind, the separation with your mother, very close. Filipino families are like, and then I was like, yeah, it's not really just the last few months, but the last 6 years in dealing with my mom. And then the years before that, just the last 25 years of dealing with the loss of suicide, and how my life turned, on the, from one shattering moment, my whole life's path, it like took a different turn. And I've, it's just interesting to me now, though, how all of these things kind of come together as far as like all these holistic forms of healing and resources to share with people and do in community have helped, like, as an advocate for mental health, being able to share this is what worked for me. I went through some utter hell to get here, and a lot of changes and letting things go to get to where I'm at now, but that it is possible. And yeah, maybe my holistic journey from 2006 to now, it's a long time, but I needed to go through all of that to get to where I'm at now, to really appreciate not only the people that are in your life, but the things that people told you that you should be doing that really weren't good for you. And that you don't have to listen to doctors. My dad was a doctor, like I grew up with a doctor and a nurse in the home who were like, for every ailment we had, there was something in the cupboard, just take it, and it was always available in there, and it's just what you did. And I'm like, and that's your family telling you this is okay. And so that's something that I have had to kind of battle with, is that my family sees things in a different way than I do. And I'm like the oddball hippie girl, that does all this. Oh, you're going to go jump in the pool. It's 55. You're crazy. Yes, I am. In a good way. But, but they still support me and love me. But, it does make things difficult when you're trying to, like, this is what I want to do with my life. And I'm still trying to figure it out. Like, how am I supposed to keep doing this and make a living out of it? But I know that it's the healing that you're sharing with people that is the payment. It's like that to me, it's like, okay. And then I feel this huge connection with Wim. Now, I am not a certified Wim Hof instructor. I have taken the fundamentals course on his app, and I've been to some retreats with I have certified Wim Hof instructor friends who I consider mentors, who I call on all the time.
The one in Nashville.
Yeah. And Jesse Coomer, he's in the Midwest, and Ryan Bean, who I met, he's out in Utah. And we just connect on, and I go to them for my questions and just want to make sure I'm doing things right. But, it's still a goal, I think, to become an instructor one day. But to meet Wim is definitely like an ultimate dream, and be able to share with him a Pixie polar plunge and put a crown on his head, a crown of
He
rosemary.
needs a crown. He would look good with one.
I think rosemary. I think he'd be totally down with it too. Just his personality. Like, that was one thing I did during the pandemic when I first heard about Wim and started doing the challenge, was I looked up every single YouTube interview, podcast, like with Russell Brand. Oh my God, so hilarious. And his personality is just so contagious, and like it makes you want to learn more and want to do more, with him and with the method. But so that's kind of how I ended up here. And I actually came home a week and a half ago to do my third workshop on the Chinese New Year, because I always consider that the real New Year is the year of the water rabbit. And I feel like everything's going to just be like, whew. So, be like water, let it flow. But then I ended up, my car decided to break down and, all the lights came on, and it's like, oh shoot, I thought we were done with Mercury, but we were still in the shadow. So, this whole like expect the unexpected has been another like theme that I try to, it's hard to say it, do it, but sometimes you just have to, roll with things or just sit. And it's like, it's forced me to sit and be here. But also I've been able to spend a little extra time with my mom, who's been in a nursing home, who was dealing with another setback back in my mom was in the New Year. She was not okay. And I had to leave, it's really hard to leave that and have to go back to New Orleans and be like, shit, she's not okay. But when I went through that grieving process that I said, when I moved up until about October, November, December, it was like I, in my head, had to be, in my heart, be okay with the fact that she's only going to get worse the older she gets. And like, I was grieving the mom that I knew up until that point, and I appreciate and hold this memory of her before how she is now. Like how she was when she was with me. Like 2020 was the best year for us during the pandemic. None of my family could come in town because of the, just the whole COVID thing scare. And it was just she and I mainly at the house. And that's when our community came in, and we would hang by the pool and had all this support. All of a sudden, we were out in the garden all the time. I was doing her physical therapy online with her physical therapist, Zoom. So I was working out with her. We were working out with cans from the pantry and stuff like that. And it was fun. So that's like, that's the vision that I keep in my head and my heart of my mom. And, how she is now. She has gotten better progressively over the last week and a half that I've been here. Like I've gotten to go up there and cook and feed her and her be able to communicate. And so I'm seeing her get better on her own, or, with their support. And so it gave me time to spend with her and to spend with community and be on the beach. Like I got to watch you go surfing, and Caleb, and it was beautiful. Like that time on the beach and being able to just run and dip in the cold water and have that vitamin D on our skin naturally instead of taking the vitamin D pill. It's like nature's medicine. So, and my car will be fixed by Friday. And then, it's kind of been just this pause, this Pixie pause of like, all right, let's sit with where you're at and direction and things like that. And I feel like, the shift from into the Lunar New Year and out of all the retrogrades, like there's this space now where we're having 0 retrogrades up until April 21st, I believe. So a lot of forward moving clear motion, I feel like. So I've been using this time to like really release the stuff that's not working. Gotta let it go, really let it go, and calling in okay, let's get a clearer path of where to go from here. But I want to keep, building the community here. I mean, we have such a great community here. It builds on its own. And there's a lot of people doing ice baths and all the holistic measures here, modalities. And over there in New Orleans, I'm still working on building that. And I know it's coming.
I think you're good at building community.
Yeah, I feel like it does kind of naturally flow when the right people come along.
We're approaching the hour.
Awesome.
Is there some final thoughts that you might have or reflections?
Wow, no, I'm grateful to be able to speak my truth again, and especially when it comes to talking about what happened to me 15 years ago with the old friend, we'll say, because I really send all the forgiveness and peace and love to that person, because that's all I felt. And I was genuinely inviting this person into my world, and whatever happened after that is on them.
Yeah.
And send peace no matter what. Like, that's just who I am. And I don't ever want to be like a bitter person like I was. And I realized that it all happened for a reason. And I'm grateful for that it wasn't worse, and that I'm able to be able to talk about that, because I do want to write a book about it. I've talked about it for years, and I feel like that's coming too soon. But also that just to be patient with yourself when it comes to feeling like you are alone, or feeling like you don't have people in your life, that you will find this community. Yeah. Just reach out. It's there, and it will find you when you're on the right path. So I'm just grateful to be here and to be able to spend this time and be able to talk about my truth and be okay with it.
Yeah.
And still feel I'm okay. I'm going to be okay.
I like that.
So thank you.
You're welcome. Sage, do you have any closing thoughts or feedback?
There's just so much in what you've shared that resonates really deeply in my heart.
Aww.
I love that you touched earlier in our conversation about the universe making room.
Yes.
Making room in our lives when we need to really just explore who we truly are. And oftentimes that process can be really painful, but it seems that you've really come in to find your ultimate truth, and it's really just a blessing and an honor to speak to somebody who has discovered a practice or a series of practices and is willing to contribute their skill sets and knowledge to the communities. So thank you very much.
Well, I hope that we can have you engage in a Pixie polar plunge sometime so you can get your crown.
Yeah, you need a crown, Sage.
Yes, please. I need a crown.
And have you done an ice bath?
I don't think it was an official ice bath. I haven't formally taken an ice bath, but I am prone to jumping into cold rivers.
Awesome. So. Perfect. You can do it. We'll line that up. Perhaps the next one. So I'm looking at coming back to be more feasible and make it worth my while every other month. But Empathic Practice is such a beautiful space with a garden, and they're actually going to have an indoor cold plunge eventually, but I gifted them a tub that was gifted to me, and they have an infrared sauna inside. And there's other spaces like Uru they've been doing with Justin Nutt. They've been doing some over there. And if you want to go out in nature right now, go jump in the Gulf, or if you have a pool. And there's also cold water creeks everywhere. It's great.
We're about to go camping at one.
Yeah. Take advantage of the cold showers right now until the summertime comes, because then it's back to finding ice or going to the cold springs. But I'm hoping to be back March 20th or 21st for the spring equinox. I thought that would be a really beautiful time to celebrate again.
Raela, can you continue on plugging yourself? Do you have social media? You mentioned your website.
Right. So I've been working on a website forever, and it's one of those things that I feel like this might is going to help push me to really put it out there. But I got the .com, RaelaMarie.com, a couple years ago, because it is a very unique name. And even though there are other people who spell it like me, I was like, well, I'm going to get the .com and turn it into I'm a holistic wellness guide, is what I like to call myself, and mental health advocate, to share all of the resources there and continue with the blog that's going to become the book. So I have Instagram and Facebook. Under my personal is Raela.Marie or Raela Marie Villanueva. And then I have my small business is Emerald Coast Pixies. So at Emerald Coast Pixies. And so I plan to get that website out there. I'm here a few more days. It's time to push it. And now I can add this podcast, which would be really beautiful. So I really appreciate lots of gratitude
Thank you, Raela.
to both of you for letting me speak.
You're very welcome. I think your story is important, and we appreciate you sharing it.
Thank you.
So happy to connect with you in this good way. So
Yes.
thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
You too.
All right. I love you, Sage. I love you, Raela.
I love
It's good
you
to have you guys.
Thank you.
Much love, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.
I used to think that time was a curse that locked you in a place you never wanted to be.
Thank you for listening. We hope you will join us next episode where we will be talking to Aiden Arant. Aiden is one of our dearest friends and brother. He is a living Adonis with a curiosity matched only by his totem animal, the cat. He has the memory of an elephant, and if you are not careful, he will tell you one too many animal facts. We love you, we wish you well, and we hope to talk to you soon.
Broken bones, and who would have thought this would be the place where my soul grows? You spend your days climbing up those mountains, never face off, and it won't still until you break. You won't know your breaking point until it breaks. And don't complain about how far long it's gonna take, 'cause you don't know the friends love you're gonna make, and you won't know your breaking point until it breaks. And now I know I would've missed those faces, would've skipped those places and lonely roads, and now I know I would've raced through the pages where my heart it braces our broken bones, and who would have thought this would be the place where my soul grows? Don't wish away your burdens for a lighter load. You'll never know until you go. Don't take the shorter path when there's a higher road. You'll never know until you go. You can do anything with your soul in tow. You'll never know until you go. Go, go, go. Figure out your passion, make it so. To those who say you can't, you sure know. You are gold. You are gold. And now I know I would've missed those faces, would've skipped those places and lonely roads. And now I know I would've raced through the pages where my heart it braces our broken bones. And who would have thought this would be the place where my soul